Tom, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, this first item is consideration of a proposed resolution adopting an amendment to the recycled water policy. Specifically, we're going to amend or considering amendment for monitoring requirements for constituents of emerging concern. Gordon Innes and Tim Regan were going to be presenting today.
Good morning, Vice Chair Spivey, Weber, and members of the board. For the record, my name is Gordon Innes. I'm a senior engineer with the Division of Water Quality. To my left here is Emily Emanuel, an environmental scientist with the Division of Water Quality. And to my far left here is Tim Regan, a senior staff counsel with the Office of Chief Counsel. For today, I am presenting Item 4, consideration of a resolution adopting amendment to the recycled water policy to establish monitoring requirements for constituents of emerging concern. We've been in this process for a while developing this amendment. It started in February 2009 when we adopted the recycled water policy. The recycled water policy has a provision that the State Water Board established a scientific advisory panel to provide recommendations for monitoring constituents of emerging concern. And then once those panel recommendations are provided, the staff was to take those recommendations for consideration by the board for implementation as requirements for monitoring CECs in recycled water. The Science Advisory Panel completed its report in June 2010. A board hearing was held on the panel report in December 2010. Following that, the staff drafted an amendment to the recycled water policy prescribing monitoring requirements for constituents of emerging concern. And this was sent out to the public for written comment. We received those comments back, redrafted it, and issued a new draft, which was considered by the State Water Board at an October 16th, 2012 board meeting. During that meeting, adoption of the amendment was postponed to allow staff to complete responses to comments. And staff has completed those responses to comments, and they're currently posted on the State Water Board website. Since the October 16th, 2012 hearing, staff did make some minor changes to the recycled water policy amendment. First, to clarify that for landscape irrigation, priority pollutants are to be monitored in the recycled water. There was some concern that the existing language could be interpreted to mean that the regional boards could require monitoring of CECs in groundwater. We also added some additional language that would allow changing the monitoring point for certain CECs from before the RO unit to after the reverse osmosis unit. And the reason for this is that it was explained to us that some CECs are not removed by reverse osmosis units, and the one that was specifically identified was NDMA. And we received comment that for that particular constituent, it's all going to pass through the RO unit. And so the preferable place to monitor for that constituent was before the oxidation unit. So the monitoring would be before the oxidation unit and after the oxidation unit. And so we're allowing this change in monitoring in specific situations where the water recycler can demonstrate that the RO unit will not be removing any of the CEC. And we also made some minor editorial changes. Specifically, we changed some wording. For example, efficacy was changed to effectiveness, and a couple of other minor word changes.
Can I ask you a question on the second item
Yeah.
about the provision that you added? If it's not totally clear to me as to whether or not the discharger has to prove that the CECs are a problem, or rather than proving that they're not a problem. Is that confusing at all to you? And I'm looking at Tim and Gordon and Melanie. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. I think as written, the burden of proof is on the water recycler to show that the ROU, or to show that the reverse osmosis unit will not remove the CEC. So what it says, so. Okay. Okay. Well. Okay. Well. I'll read it here, and if you got any suggested edits, we can look at it. So, if the project proponent can demonstrate that the RO unit will not substantially remove a CEC, the Regional Water Board may allow monitoring for that CEC prior to the advanced oxidation processes instead of prior to the RO unit.
My recommendation is that we reverse the proof, if you will, to say that unless the project proponent shows that it will substantially remove a CEC, that we would, the regional board may allow monitoring of the CEC prior to the AOP. It's minor, but I don't know, it just seems better to prove a positive than a negative.
Well, let me ask a question. You know, what's easier, to demonstrate that it will do something or that it won't do something? I don't know. So I'm looking to Gordon, hopefully.
Okay, so
What Fran has suggested, I guess, is something like requiring them to demonstrate that the RO unit will not remove a CEC. And unless they do, the regional board would then be required, would then require them to do the monitoring prior to the RO instead of the AOP. I think, is that what you're saying? I don't know if that makes a difference. I honestly don't know. Charla, help.
Yes. Charla Farnock with State Water Board. I guess the reading just this part by itself takes it out of context. My understanding is that the requirement is that there is a monitoring point before RO unit, and then there's follow-up monitoring unit at the end of the process.
Okay.
And the comment was that there are times that they would feel doing that monitoring before RO unit is a waste of their money because they already know that the compound is not going to be removed by RO unit. So they're proposing at those times, by proving that point, to move the monitoring point, instead of being prior to RO unit, to be afterwards. So that's all it is. So the fact of monitoring it prior to RO, that's a default. So the positive is a default.
But the point that I'm making is not the fact, because either way, that's what happens. But does the recycled water facility show that the RO membrane will, are they proving that it will not, that basically that it is a waste of money because it won't do anything, or are they showing that that in fact what it will do? And so therefore, if they can just show what the membrane will do, it seems to me that that's a catch-all. Okay, our membrane will stop these kinds of.
So maybe I can
Okay.
shed some light and make sure that I'm correct on this, Gordon, and is that we require after also, right? So the question is, where in the process are we requiring the before? But we're requiring it after. And so if it's earlier, at the before the RO unit, and the RO unit doesn't take it out, it's still at the end of the process we're doing the final comparison. So I'm not sure that it matters. Is that correct, Gordon? That's the way I read it.
Yeah, we're monitoring the removal across the process. And in cases where we know the RO unit will not provide any removal, then across the process means before the advanced oxidation process and after the advanced oxidation process.
It doesn't matter. If we can, I mean, I'm just seeing if we can define the membrane, the RO membrane, as something that works for removal of certain chemicals, and I would think most RO units have that kind of claim, if you will, that could be verified. If they do provide that barrier, then that gets acknowledged. If they don't provide the barrier, then we'll be picking it up later anyway. But it's like it seems to me it's going to be easier for the discharger to actually say what their membrane does do rather than what it doesn't do. But maybe, I don't know. Am I making too much out of this? Probably. Go ahead, Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Couch with the Division of Water Quality. I think part of the issue here is that there was a large recycled water user who had equipment in place already that was between the RO unit and the AOP unit. And the reason they had it in between was because they found that this particular CEC was not being removed by the RO unit. So it was going to be a substantial cost, according to them, to move the inline monitoring equipment from between the RO and the AOPs to the beginning. But you're correct, it wouldn't make any difference to monitor it before. And what we were saying was, well, if you can prove that to the regional board, that it's not going to make any difference, we'll allow you to, or the regional board may allow you to leave that inline equipment in place in that site-specific facility.
I think with the discussion, it's helped me understand that a little bit better, and I think I'm okay with staff suggested language.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. We responded to the comments we received on the amendment to the recycled water policy. A lot of the comments we did incorporate into changes to the recycled water policy. There are some requests, however, that we did not make. Two of them concern landscape irrigation. We received requests that we monitor CECs and recycled water used for landscape irrigation. The Science Advisory Panel recommended that we not do that. The reason being that they had a framework that they used to make this determination. With that framework, they looked at how much of the recycled water would actually be drunk. And they also looked at the existing benchmarks for the existing for endocrine disruptors. And using that risk-based framework, they concluded that it's not worth the cost of monitoring CECs and recycled water used for landscape irrigation. The comments that we received to that were basically saying that for endocrine disruptors, the existing methods that are being used to determine the benchmarks were inadequate, and that that these endocrine disruptors are actually toxic at much lower doses. We also received a request that priority pollutant monitoring for recycled water used for landscape irrigation not be reduced. We reduced it to the equivalent level that we're currently requiring for MPDS facilities, and we think that's an appropriate level of monitoring. For groundwater recharge reuse, there was a request that additional CECs be monitored. There is a relatively limited set of CECs to monitor in this amendment. It was the same set that was recommended by the Science Advisory Panel. We believe that the framework that the Science Advisory Panel provided for determining the monitoring was a good framework to use, and we decided to stay with the recommendation of the Science Advisory Panel. There was also a request that the regional water boards allow additional CECs to be monitored. We felt that we're adopting a policy. The purpose of the policy is to establish uniform requirements among the regional boards. And so staff thinks that the language as written in the recycled water policy, which limits the monitoring for those CECs that are required to be monitored, should be kept.
But that also includes where the Department of Public Health has required CEC monitoring. That CEC monitoring will continue.
That's correct.
And so there is a larger set of CECs being monitored in those areas where drinking water is an issue.
Yeah. Well, we're not preempting CDPH's authority here.
Right.
If CDPH believes that there are some additional CECs that need to be monitored, we're allowing those to be placed in any water reclamation requirements. There's also a request for more frequent updates of the monitoring requirements for CECs. Given how long it's taken us to get through this process, we don't think we can do this on a 2-year period. Okay. As much of it pains me to tell this, considering how much we look through the order, we did find a misplaced footnote. And so if on table 3, the second box in the constituent column, the footnote should be 5 instead of 4. And that's my presentation.
Are there any questions for staff? Okay, then shall we, can I hear a motion to approve the amendment to the recycle? Oh, we do. I'm sorry. Martha? Oh, my gosh, after killing yourself to get here? Or killing others to get here? I do have one comment card. Martha Davis.
Thank you very much. Martha
Introduce
Davis.
yourself.
Yes, Martha Davis on behalf of the Water Reuse Association. And I just hear 3 points. 1, we strongly support this policy. Number 2, we believe it's consistent with the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Panel and appreciate the board's commitment to the continuing process of using the best available science to update these monitoring requirements. And third, we want to say thank you to the staff. They've been gone beyond the call of duty to sit down with us, work with us. There's a lot of very technical issues that have been covered within this policy, and it's been a great privilege and a pleasure to work with them. Thank you very much.
Are you sure you don't want to say more? That's great. We don't hear that as often enough, and it's well deserved. Okay, so now I will accept a motion.
Actually, could I ask a question?
Sure.
I think all the board members received an email from Ms. Brenda Adelman with a comment letter dated January 18th. I would assume it's a late comment letter that
So,
is not in the record and will not be considered.
yes, yesterday we became aware of this letter that was sent directly to the board members. It was not submitted in compliance with the comment requirements for the hearing notice and for the proceeding for today. However, my understanding is staff has had an opportunity to look over that. It was forwarded to them yesterday, and that there really were no new comments in there. It was essentially a summary and recitation of prior comments submitted. If staff want to correct, augment, or modify what I just said, please do so. But my recommendation would be that it not be included in the administrative record for this proceeding. However, as I indicated, all of the various comments have already been in the record and have been addressed by staff.
And I should also disclose that I also received a late, not really a comment letter, but a list of recommended changes from Hilda Bay. And again, I don't believe they reflect anything different than what we already have in the record, so it also will not be moved into the record.
Correct.
With that, I'll move for adoption of this item with the one footnote change that Gordon mentioned.
Good. And I'd like to second the motion, and in seconding it, really affirming the care that staff and stakeholders have used to develop the science panel, and their input into this process, and to really affirm the framework that was developed to methodically identify the issues going forward with recycled water use and CECs. And I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'd like to add just tomorrow we're going to be doing a workshop on bioindicators, and so we'll be looking at surface water bodies, and my guess is that and I know that CECs will come up in that conversation. This is a workshop, so it'll come up in that conversation as well, which I think is appropriate because the emphasis on CECs has been with recycled water, which is a relatively small portion of the water that is that the state has to work with, and so broadening out the focus on CECs from recycled water to water in general, I think is an appropriate place to go. So those who are interested will want to tune in tomorrow for the workshop. Okay, Tom, would you like to introduce item 5?
Item 5 is an informational item on the board's resource alignment project. We approved the first report in the resource alignment, or the board did, in March 2012. And we now have some follow-up actions for our second phase. And Karen will discuss. This is a project she's been working on, and she'll give us an introduction to it.
So good morning, members. Karen Tregovich, Chief Deputy Director. Before we bring our stakeholder leads up, I just wanted to briefly provide you with a quick overview of where we've come with this project. As you know, this is phase 2 of a 2-phase effort. The first effort, a 3-phase effort, Member Dodak is reminding me. The first
You
phase
keep forgetting my fees, phase 3, Karen. I wonder why.
Because we're trying to be thorough in addressing phase 2, and I don't want my attention diverted. The first phase report was completed and posted to our website last spring, and I think the effort received a lot of attention. It's one of the first of its kind, along with many things that we do here, including our performance report, where we really disclosed in a very transparent manner where our money comes from, what we're using it for, what programs provide funding support for others, et cetera. This phase 2 effort is really looking at the requirements that we impose on the regulated community through our regulatory requirements, and looking at ways that things can be done differently to reduce those costs to the community while retaining the level of protection for water quality that we have and will continue to provide. So the 4 stakeholder leads that we'll be presenting for you today, or providing you with an update, were the 4 pilot areas that were identified when the board adopted the work plan for Phase 2 last summer, last August. And I'd like to remind everyone that all of this information is posted on our website. In the issue topic area, we have a header called Resource Alignment, and you can get all of the reports, the resolutions, and any of the notes or outcomes of the subgroup meetings that are being held by our stakeholder lead. I also just want to briefly mention that we are also involved in a somewhat similar effort